I've had thousands of lifetimes, but I've only had close to 100 here on Earth. What happened was a man had ended up drugging my drink, which resulted in me having an overdose and a massive heart attack from it. And I realized my body started to become more and more paralyzed, more from my legs first, and then slowly moving up my body. And I relived my entire life over again in just a matter of moments. But this time, I not only lived it from my own perspective, but I relived it from every single other person's perspective. This was the angel of death. This was Azrael. And it was so amazing being out of my body. I felt so weightless. One of the most amazing experiences I had in my life. We actually are God, and she wants all of us to reconnect with her once again because she is all our eternal mother. They showed me what my job was going to be in the afterlife. I was actually going to be a guide for multiple people who were still going to be living on Earth at the time.
Welcome, everyone, to Our Sliver of Time. Today we have a very special guest, Nadine Telishewsky, and she had a near-death experience at age 24 and quite a few other experiences, including premonitions, a whole range of topics we're going to get into. But first and foremost, thank you so much, Nadine, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Do you mind if we start off with your near-death experience? How exactly did this happen in the first place?
Sure, no problem. So I'll just mention one thing really quickly, just because it comes into the story of my NDE, that in between the years of 13 to 19, I did have some angel experiences where they would take me out of dreams at night and show me things and go astral traveling with them. So when I was 24, which was in 2004, what happened was a man had ended up drugging my drink with the date rape drug, which resulted in me having an overdose and a massive heart attack from it. And I had actually had 5 premonitions before this happened. So about 6 months before my NDE, I started to become more and more afraid of things I was eating and drinking, worried that they would make me sick or hurt me in some way, and I had no idea why I started to be afraid of this. Then 3 months before my NDE, I had a dream that I was with my best friend at the time, and we were standing in some unknown place, and I was holding a mixed drink in it. And at one point, I just passed out, had a heart attack, and died in this dream. And I woke up being very confused because it was so realistic, but I just dismissed it as a dream and didn't realize that was a premonition of what was going to happen. A week before my NDE, I received an invitation to go to a New Year's Eve party of a male coworker that I only knew so well at the time. And I had a feeling as soon as I got it that something maybe not good was going to happen there, but I didn't know what. And then the night before I went to this party, I had 2 dreams of significance. In one of them, I met this man for the first time, and he was tall, thin, late 20s, blonde hair, had an eyebrow ring, and he came over to me and was joking and laughing. And the next day at the party, shortly after I arrived, a man looking exactly like that came in, started talking and joking with me. So I had jumped about it. And the other dream I had the night before was another angel experience, like in my youth. Angels had grabbed my hand and pulled me very quickly across the universe into some very odd-looking building with no ceilings that just went completely far up. And they showed me what my job was going to be in the afterlife. I was actually going to be a guide for multiple people who were still going to be living on Earth at the time. So it was wonderful to see and understand that as we move along our soul path, older souls like myself have an opportunity at times to be guides for younger souls. So we all end up taking care of each other, both in this life and in the next life. So even though I had all those premonitions, you would think I just wouldn't go to this party, but I had some other strong feeling that for whatever reason, I just needed to go there. So I listened to that feeling and I went. So this was New Year's Eve 2004. I went to that New Year's Eve party with my best friend at the time. So I was only there for 2 hours. I only sipped on 2 mixed drinks during that time, so I was not drunk at all. Most of the time, my drink and belongings were in one room in the house that they, encourage us all to leave everything there. And I was in the other rooms of the house most of the time, away from my drink and things. And I was chatting and meeting people and dancing and things like that. At one point, after about 2 hours, suddenly I felt really high and disoriented, and then my legs just collapsed out underneath me, and I fell to the floor, and I realized my body started to become more and more paralyzed, more from my legs first, and then slowly moving up my body. I started to become scared, not understanding everything that was happening. At one point, I figured out that it must have been that somebody drugged my drink because there's no other way that this could have happened. And I thankfully told my best friend what I thought. And at one point, when I was more completely becoming paralyzed, and I knew that I was probably going to pass out, I got scared, and I just remember yelling out in my head, "God, please help me." And then shortly after, I did completely pass out. What my best friend told me then, while she later told me what happened while I was passed out. She said 3 men had come up to her and said, "Oh, she looks like she's just drunk. We're just going to pick her up and go put her in a bedroom upstairs. She can sleep it off. I'm sure she'll be fine." But thankfully, because of what I told my best friend, she wouldn't allow anyone to touch me. So I was just left there with her. Shortly after, I started to vomit black, which later on I found out was blood in my system. So they realized something was wrong and they called 911. So all I know is I woke up in a hospital 6 hours later, feeling so horrible, so disoriented and sick and in pain. And the doctor was kind of looking at me funny and said that he wasn't sure if I was going to make it, because while I was being wheeled into the hospital, he said I was having a massive heart attack, and they had to pump me full of potassium and bring it down. I tried to tell the nurses and doctors that I don't take any drugs and that somebody must have drugged my drink, but they didn't really seem to believe me. I'm not sure if they thought that maybe I was a drug addict. They didn't treat me very well. So as soon as I was able to just get up off my bed and hold onto a wall to go use the washroom, they pretty much said, "Oh, she's fine," and discharged me. And they just gave me a prescription for potassium because they said I needed to regulate my heart for the next few days so that I don't have another heart attack. So I went home. I lived by myself though, and I felt absolutely horrible after this experience. So I just stayed home in bed the whole day. And as the day went on, I felt worse and worse and worse. And I was at the point in the evening time where I was underneath all my covers and I was still shivering and just shaking, and I had no energy, and I was so disoriented again, and my heart was going crazy. It was going really fast, and then it would beat a few times really slow and just go back and forth until I literally just felt it stop. And as soon as it stopped, I just popped out of my body. And it was so amazing being out of my body. I felt so weightless. I felt a complete peace. I was completely away from my body, feeling all that sickness and pain and everything else. And it felt amazing just to be so free of all of that. I felt the complete lack of time there, and even my mind was different. My emotions were different. Like everything was just gone. I was just at complete peace, but I was also had excitement and joy. It was amazing. And as soon as I popped out of my body, I knew exactly what had happened. I had died, and I was so excited. And since I had had lots of experiences with angels and going to different places with them in my youth, I knew exactly what to do. I just started flying straight up because I knew I'm going to heaven. That's it. I'm not waiting for anyone to come get me. I'm going up. So I just started flying up faster and higher. At one point, everything went black, but it was just for a few seconds, and it wasn't scary at all. It was very comforting. And then the darkness lifted, and as soon as it did, I was over this beautiful meadow, and I saw mountains in the background, and I was just admiring how beautiful it all was there. And then suddenly flying beside me was a hundreds of foot tall almost creature-like being to my right side, and I was looking up at him in awe. And he was wearing this costume of pitch black smoke. And I say costume because that's originally what he looked like, this being with giant wings. But when he looked at me, I saw the most beautiful, bright white light and high vibrational love energy beaming out of his eyes and his nose and his mouth and his ears. So I can feel his vibration underneath. And he was a very high vibrational light angel. This was the angel of death. This was Azrael. So what I realized happened is, as I was flying up, I guess I was slightly off course. So he had scooped me up in his giant wing and helped me get to the exact right place I was supposed to as I was heading up to heaven. And so I was so thankful to him for helping me get to the right place and for, meeting me. So I just was thanking him telepathically, which when you're outside of your body, just like in my teen years with angels, everything is telepathic and it's just so normal and natural there outside of our bodies to do so. So I thanked him and he simply said, "We are pleased for you to be back home." And he then went to go fly to the side of one of the mountains where I saw he was just very intently watching over everyone and everything because he was in charge of overseeing, of course, everyone who was passing on for the day. So then very close by, I saw this light from above that came down near me, and I went and flew right into the light. And as soon as I did, I realized this light was light. It was also love, unconditional love. It was high vibrational energy. It had consciousness. It was all of it together. And I knew that light was coming from God above in a higher realm of heaven. And as soon as I went into it, I was just absolutely encompassed with unconditional love. And it just embedded and was shaking with that high vibrational energy and that love feeling into every aspect of me. And it just overtook me. And it was unlike anything that you can describe down here in terms of feeling loved. And I started to just follow up the light because that's all I wanted to do is go closer and closer to the source of it. And as soon as I started to move up further into the light, a smaller light angel now just came along and went above me in the light and had pretty much let me know that yes, this was my ideal time to transition on. And I would soon be going farther up into a higher level of heaven, but there was something to do first. And then he motioned to my left side and said, "Look." And when he did, I stopped and had turned that way. And there I had my life review. And I relived my entire life over again in just a matter of moments. But this time, I not only lived it from my own perspective, but I relived it from every single other person's perspective that I ever had an interaction with in my life at the same time. So I got to see and feel what everyone else was thinking and feeling and experiencing at the time as well. So it had me understand just how profound an influence we all have in each other. So every single word, action, decision, feeling that we have all affects each other. Even our vibrations affect each other, and then it all ripples out into society afterwards. I wasn't judged for anything at all. I also wasn't commended on anything at all. It all just was, and it was all just fully accepted. The only thing that felt slightly highlighted at times is any times that I was kind to anyone else. So I understood that as much as everything was accepted and nothing was judged, that was the only thing that was important in life, was just how kind we are to each other. So after I had my life review, I saw underneath it was this gigantic cyclone of energy, and it wasn't moving. It was like a stagnant cyclone that went so far down I couldn't see maybe where it stopped. And all my past lives before this one were all in it descending down. And I've been explained before that I've had thousands of lifetimes, but I've only had close to 100 here on Earth. And I was given the opportunity if I wanted to review next any of my other past lives, but I told them, no, that's okay, because already in my teenage years, angels had started showing me multiple of my past lives. So I let them know, no, I already know enough about those. That's okay. So they said, okay. And then I continued going on up into the light, following that angel again. And I wanted nothing more than to be doing that and be in that light and following more towards its source. However, something caught my eye, and it was on my lower right side. I saw flashes of something. So I looked at it and I realized I was seeing flashes and premonitions of the futures of people on Earth. And although some things were more positive and some were neutral, there were a lot of negative and sad or traumatic events that I saw. So it had me stop, and I was looking at this and I felt so much sadness and compassion and heartache for a lot of things that I saw. So the angel realized I had stopped and then, stopped as well, and then turned around and was waiting for me to process this because he wanted me to keep following him up into the light. But instead, I said, would all of these things still have happened if I hadn't have died right now? And the angel said, what you see is simply the future that is currently set to be, yet any possible change could conceivably change what is yet to come. So I asked, okay, is it possible then for me to go back and attempt to stop some of these negative events from taking place? And the angel said, we must warn you. There is a possibility you may not succeed in stopping any negative event or even change anything for their betterment. But we will leave the decision up to you if you wish to return to Earth or not. I told the angel, even knowing I may not be able to change anything, I at least have to try. The angel seemed possibly a little concerned at the time, or at least maybe that was just my perception, because I understood that was my ideal time. I had only planned to come down for 24 years and pass on then. I'd already completed everything I originally came down to do, and they had already previously in my youth shown me what my next life was supposed to be. I was supposed to reincarnate into the body of a girl growing up in Spain. So I would be completely changing this timeline, and also I would be changing what my job was going to be in the afterlife, because I was supposed to, start being a guide right away as well. So I'd be changing everything if I decided to come back. However, since we have complete free will choice at any point to do whatever we want, even if it goes against something we originally planned, they still give us that free will choice. And because I decided to come back, he said, okay. And then he more waved his arm, and with it, it seemed to release me from the light. And I suddenly went crashing so far and quickly back down into my body, and I crashed into it really hard and back into feeling absolutely horrible and sick and barely having any energy and everything else once again that I had left when I first had transitioned on. So I no longer saw the angel, but I distinctly heard his voice, and he said, your mother is about to phone you. You must turn over and answer your phone if you're going to survive. A matter of seconds later, my phone starts ringing, and it took all my energy that I had in that state just to be able to turn over onto my right side. And I picked up my phone and I answered it, and it was my mother, and she had just found out that I had been in the hospital the night before. And she asked if there was anything I need. And I told her, yes, I have a prescription for potassium, and I don't feel well enough to get it. So she did come over and get the prescription and pick up the prescription for me, which at least regulated my heart rate, which was good. And it was at least another few years before I had another heart attack, but at least at that point, I didn't have an NDE from it, so that one was okay.
You said there was 3 guys that tried to bring you upstairs before your friend kind of intervened. Just out of curiosity, like, did you ever find out who had drugged your drink, or do you know? Do you not know? Do you not want to know?
In the end, I don't know. There was that one man that I had dreamt of, and the next day I saw him. So that was always one wonderment in my mind, right? If it may have been him, but again, I don't know. I honestly didn't know anyone at this party other than my best friend at the time, and only a little bit that male coworker. So all these other people at the party, I have no idea who they were. And even when I spoke to that coworker later on to explain what happened, he had told me that because it was house party and he was living there with 2 roommates, and all of them just invited people, and then they invited people, and he said that all night people were coming in and out, and friends were inviting friends, so he doesn't even know everyone who was coming in and out. So from that, I don't know. And I guess another thing I should mention is when I had my life review, the best I can explain it is I can remember at the time of watching it, remembering every aspect of what anyone did, said, or felt at the time, and experiencing everything from everyone else's perspective. But when I came back into my body, there were some things that were withheld from my NDE from me remembering when I was back in. So, for example, any premonitions I saw in the future, which was the whole reason I came back to my body, is that I wanted to stop these bad things from happening. They had erased what those premonitions are. So now I remember when I was in my NDE, I was looking at them, but they're like all blurred out. So they're just blurred images. So the same thing when I had my life review. So I know at the time I experienced everything. So I would have had that information, if that makes sense, at the time of who it was. But when I came back in, I don't remember the details anymore. So I think that they took all that out as well so that it didn't affect my life. But in any case, whoever it was had more just let it go. It was one aspect that when I came back, even though I almost died from it, I didn't seem to have at least the trauma from that in me. So it seemed like it was nothing else that I more wanted to pursue in any way, if that makes sense. I more was able to just kind of put it aside and let it go, and that it happened. And I was more just happy I had an NDE. It was one of the most amazing experiences I had in my life. But in the end, the way I see it is it doesn't matter who it was.
When you had this life review, you said that, you were not condemned, you were also not you were not judged positively or negatively. But you said that it was almost like an emphasis on the importance
Mm,
of kindness. Have you ever
yeah.
have you ever put any thought into why that might be, why there would be such like an emphasis on
Mm.
kindness? It seems to be important.
Yes, yes. So quite a bit there. I later on, when I had a near-death like experience, I had it with God, and God really showed me there why kindness is so important. And I'll speak about that later on, so I don't want to get too much into it now. But kindness is important because I was shown that we actually all are pieces of God. We're not just some spark of the divine. We actually are God. We all are pieces of Him. We're living inside of His body. We're equivalent to all being quarks. So everything we do to each other, this is why we impact each other so much, because we all are one being. So God had told me once, everything one does and says of the light matters. It adds to the light and it can never be erased. So every time, since we are pieces of God, and since we all absolutely affect each other, even with our resonances and our thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything, that light is so powerful that it not only affects us, it affects the person we're giving kindness to, and then ripples out into society, meaning rippling out into the greater aspect of God. So anything we do in terms of unconditional love, which is our true power, it's our true essence, it's what we're made out of since we're pieces of God. Unconditional love means pretty much unconditionally accepting somebody absolutely as they are and passing along our true essence to them. So, if that makes sense, kindness is unconditionally accepting somebody, is unconditionally loving someone. So, this is why there was an emphasis there. And then later on in my other near death like experience, I really got to see how impactful kindness is. So, it's all one, if that makes sense. So I think this is why they already gave me an inkling of it in my near-death experience.
You were told that you had past lives, potentially hundreds on Earth and potentially thousands other places, which is extremely fascinating to me. I don't know how much thought you've ever put into this, but do you think there's like a waiting period in between lives, or do you think it's like, you kind of die in one life and you're instantly born? But I suppose you mentioned free will as well. So like, have you ever thought about how that works? Is there like a waiting period?
Hmm. Yeah. So I've been shown so far, I lost count. I'm up to knowing either 16 or 17 of my past lives so far, but at least they've only shown me the ones here on Earth. And it was fascinating. I got to see myself as in every single one, I was a different nationality and I lived in a different place in the world. I've spoken different languages, believed in different religions. So it was wonderful to experience that. Everything is free will choice. So there's no exact rules to these kind of things. So if that makes sense. So somebody can spend a long period of time if they want to in between lives, or they can spend a very short period. A lot really does have to do with free will choice and how much somebody wants to learn and how fast of a learner they are. So I've spent time in between all my lives up there, but as far as I understand, it's all a different amount of time. I do have one pre-birth memory as well. I don't know what to call it, but I have a memory of being in, I just call it a practice room, for lack of better words, where I remember practicing two very difficult things I was going to experience down here in this lifetime in my more youth. So I was practicing up there what it was going to be like going through these difficult experiences. And I was in the practice room, everything was made out of white light, which I guess makes sense because I was, up in a heavenly realm. So all the furniture was white, the room was white, like everything was bright white light. But in any case, I was practicing these things with the other people who I was going to be hurt by in various ways, right? And experience what that was going to be like. And I needed to try to remember in the back of my mind and in my heart, if that makes sense, more the strength, to get through it, more a sense of who and what I really am, right? Of what we all are, pieces of God, to try to help me, if that makes sense, get through these difficult experiences. So what I've understood is there are times where somebody might want to spend, let's say, an extended time up there as well, because maybe they need more help to prepare for certain lives, but we do have preparation for it, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into that for as well.
You had mentioned seeing androgynous beings. Was that during the near death or was that during the later experience? Just so I know when is like appropriate to ask that. Or
Do you mean from a previous interview? Is that?
so you had said something about seeing like beings like as some sort of androgynous beings. I don't know, but I don't know if
Okay.
that was from like the NDE or from the other. Was that from
Okay.
this or the other thing?
Okay. So angels have explained to me before that all ethereal light beings are all genderless. For example, in my teen years, when I saw angels, I saw them as these beautiful genderless people, but it was a shell they were wearing. So I could see that they were beautiful genderless people wearing just white robes and gold sashes, but I can see underneath they had just beautiful light energy coming out of them, and they have amazing high vibration coming off of them as well. So I just, in my teen years, I knew they were angels, and that's how I knew to follow them when I was a teenager. Many years later, when I had my spiritual reawakening after many years, and in 2021, whenever I saw angels, they just showed up as giant light beings, and they had let me know right away, we're not worried about showing you our true selves anymore because we only, put on that shell of looking human when you were a child because we didn't want to scare you, but we're not worried about that anymore. So that's what they said as well, is that they will always, when they show up to someone, come in a form that either somebody will recognize them in or that will make somebody more comfortable, because the last thing they want to do is scare everyone, and they realize just showing up as their true, gigantic light being forms, it can be scary. So that this is why people see different angels in different ways, if that makes sense.
You had said that, certain people didn't believe you, and is this why you kind of, suppressed your spirituality following that experience? Like how did that affect you?
Mm. Yes. So in my NDE, with me deciding to come back, to try to stop negative events from happening that I had seen in those premonitions at the time, as soon as I came back to my body, I realized I don't remember any of them. They had blurred them all out. And that was the first aspect that devastated me, because I came back here and felt, well, what did I come back for then, right? I don't even feel I have a purpose now, because what's even my purpose? So that was difficult. Um, I did try to tell people about my NDE, and it didn't go well. There's some people that thought I just had a dream and it wasn't real, and other people thought I was crazy or thought I was making it up, or whatever else. Or some people didn't really say anything, but then they were distancing themselves from me. So I had a really hard time. My health completely fell apart afterwards. At some point, let's say within the next 6 months or whatnot, I lost everyone. I lost my family. I lost most of my friends. I lost my health. I lost my apartment at one point, my job, everything. So I had a really, really, really difficult time, and I fell into a really bad depression, and I couldn't understand why I would be back and all of this would be happening. So I decided at that point I just completely needed to shut down my spirituality because I needed people in my life. I needed to be able to survive. I needed to get better. I needed to get out of all this. So I just stopped talking about everything. And I was able to more have, at least some people in my life, at least some friends and whatnot. And I just found a way to move on. So for the next 16 years, yeah, I completely shut that down. And it was always really difficult that I felt like I always had a wound in my heart that I wanted to have healed, but I just didn't feel safe at all opening up. And I had only heard of a few little near-death experiences before that in some documentaries and stuff, and it didn't even sound like anything I went through, so I didn't realize that there was any real help or anything that I can get out there. In any case, at the beginning of 2021, I was, which is after my 16 years of shutting myself down. So in 2021, I felt so lost. I had just finished working with the homeless population for a decade, which I had thought was my passion in life. I thought I would always be doing that. I had had a series of really bad injuries. I had to quit my job. Had no idea what I was going to do next. And I finally set out into the universe, angels. I pretty much haven't seen you since I was a teen, right? I mean, besides my NDE. And I said, I would love to have you come back. I am ready to just completely open up to my spirituality once again. I finally just wasn't going to care, what anyone else thought. Just said, if you're there, I'd love for you guys to come back. And I also said, I also need a purpose. Maybe what is one of the biggest problems that angels have that a human like me might be able to help you with? If you tell me, I'll help you. And I put that out into the universe and I wholeheartedly meant it. And within a few weeks, oh my gosh, everything reopened back up. As much as I only went astral traveling with angels in my teen years when they used to take me out of dreams at night, I realized I could now more astral travel at will. I realized I could more directly speak to angels and hear their voices. I had so many different experiences. They gave me my soul name right away, which is Royet, which resonated with me because the short version of the translation of what it is, it's derived from ancient Sanskrit and it means the color red. And it's always been my favorite color. And some people have even nicknamed me Red in this lifetime because I dye my hair red, so it made sense that my soul name was Royet. I had an experience where I got to speak to my grandfather who had passed away at the time about a decade earlier. And I had only a few conversations with him, but it was just so beautiful to be able to speak to him on the other side. And the first time he saw me, he had grabbed my hand and put a small piece of silver light in it right before I had come out of this difficult experience in astral travel, which I was just overwhelmed with at the time because it was just very overwhelming having everything open back up when my grandfather had put a small piece of silver light in my hand right before I left the experience. It was so beautiful. I had no idea what to do with it because it only exists in the ethereal realm. So I had decided to put it into my heart center for safekeeping because where else do you put something ethereal? I started to be shown many different teachings that angels would show me on the astral realm when I started to go regularly with them. They'd show me how to use energies. I slowly over time learned how to release my childhood trauma and heal from my health issues to the extent that I was able to minimize all my health issues by 90%. They also took me to the astral realm where I had an experience of meeting my childhood sexual abuser for the first time in decades. And I decided to completely forgive him, completely let go of all the effects of what he had done to me and the PTSD and all the effects I had experienced in my whole life. And I manifested a blanket of love and I wrapped him in it and I sent him off into the light. And when I did that whole procedure, as soon as he had gone off into the light, it completely broke all the mental and emotional effects and the PTSD of everything that he had done to me that I had still held on to and been affected by my whole life. It broke off of my chest and shoulders and back area. I felt it lift off and it went off with him into the light. And it was so profound for me because the next day I woke up and it was completely different. Everything was completely different. I then remembered still what he did to me, but I was no longer attached to the effects of it. So I was free from it for the first time. It's as if I was now looking at a movie screen and that it happened to actors more than it happened to me. So they helped me to release my trauma and work with energies and do a lot of self work to more accept myself and love myself for the first time in my life. And that's how I was able to do all my healing of mental and emotional effects and my health issues. And afterwards, I became a energy healer and a spiritual coach to be able to help people self-heal as well, because in the end we are all our own healers. Besides that, I had all type of other experiences with angels and teachings, and Archangel Michael came to me and I was working with him on some things. I got to meet Mother Earth, which is a beautiful unconditionally loving spirit inside of her. And she would love nothing more than for everyone to know that her spirit exists and to remember that she exists like we used to know, millennia ago. And she wants all of us to reconnect with her once again because she is all our eternal mother.